April 16th, Matthew chapter 2 and Proverbs chapter 16. As I mentioned yesterday, my goal is not to explain the whole chapter, but to find one nugget that touched my heart in Matthew 2 and one nugget that touched my heart in Proverbs 16. And each of our pastors will do this, and hopefully you'll find one nugget that touched your heart in your study of God's Word. So today, as we dive into Matthew chapter 2, the story of the Magi coming and going to Herod and finding out that the Messiah was to be born in Bethlehem, and then bringing the gifts to the baby Jesus, and then the angel appearing in a dream to Joseph and saying, "Get up and take the baby." And so Joseph and Mary fled to Egypt. And then that horrible, terrible, painful story where Herod knew that the Magi had escaped, and he sent his soldiers in and he killed every baby boy 2 years old and under. And then in verse 18, these haunting words: "A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping in great mourning, Rachel weeping for her children, and she refused to be comforted because they were no more." And you can just picture these women, these mothers, just wailing and wailing and wailing that their sons, their 18-month-old and 12-month-old and 6-month-old and 22-month-old sons had been slaughtered right in front of them. And the horror and the pain is just overwhelming. It's suffocating. You're drowning in the pain, and you can't help but think, why? And many times I've looked at that passage and wrestled with it, and I've even done deep dives back into the life of Rachel and say, how, Lord, what is this about Rachel? And when you study the life of Rachel, it's not a pretty picture. Rachel's life was filled with pettiness and strife and insecurities and rivalry with her sister Leah. And finally, after a long time, I wrote these words in my Bible that I said, this is an evil, broken, cursed world. I remember that one time I was reading a C.S. Lewis fiction, and it was actually a C.S. Lewis science fiction, and this trilogy of books by C.S. Lewis was about science fiction, and it was included angels, and they were out on other planets, and they were looking at Earth. And when these angels were looking at Earth, they called Earth the broken, dark planet, and it was covered in a shroud of darkness. And all the other planets were beautiful and light, but Earth was the broken, shrouded in darkness planet. And in the C.S. Lewis science fiction novel that I was reading, I remember when they described Earth that way, I was kind of offended. I was like, that's kind of a harsh description of Earth, because as one who lives on Earth, I like to think of it in the positive terms as a beautiful place and a God-kissed place of life and light. But I was awakened to the fact that from heaven's perspective, Earth is a very evil place. In 1 John, John says that the whole earth is under the control of the evil one. And so there's a picture here that is a painful picture, that Jesus didn't come to a pretty place. Jesus didn't come to a sweet place of flowers and lilies. Jesus came to a place of darkness and brokenness and cursed and evil. And the first time he came to rescue individual souls, that out of this brokenness and darkness, each individual soul can be redeemed. And the second time he'll come back, he's going to restore the whole world and eventually give us a new world. But this heaviness causes me to kind of say, okay, this is the world that Jesus came to, and this is the world as it looks from heaven, this horrible, painful place, and this is why the Messiah had to come. So that's a little longer than I expected, but that passage is so melancholy and emotive and even painful to me that was my comment on Matthew chapter 2. If we go over to Proverbs chapter 16, there's actually two verses in here. Proverbs chapter 16, verse 2 is one of my all-time favorite verses. It says, "All a man's ways are clean in his own sight, but the Lord weighs the motives." Having done, gosh, I don't know, 20,000 plus counseling sessions in my 40 years of pastoring, it feels like maybe more, I don't know. I've discovered that the hardest thing for people to see is their own motives. And people can see other people's motives, but they can't see their own motives. And so all a man's ways are clean in his own sight, but the Lord weighs our motives. And that's why one of my most common prayers is, Lord, show me my motives. And yet at the same time, I pray that prayer so often, Lord, show me my motives, show me my motives. Sometimes it kind of overwhelms me, show me my motives. And so I want to show you one more verse in here. Proverbs 16, verse 24 says, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. So I got to tell you that sometimes I am so analytical that I drive myself crazy. I'm just like, okay, I'm tired of analyzing. I'm tired of worrying about my motives. I'm tired if I have done everything right. And so sometimes when I'm over analyzing, a verse like Proverbs 16:24, pleasant words are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. I say, Fitner, stop analyzing. Stop obsessing over everything. Just go bless somebody. Go tell somebody they're beautiful. Go tell somebody the Lord loves them. Go tell somebody the Lord is pleased with them. And when I do that, I feel the life of God flow through me. So those are my little nuggets from Proverbs chapter 16 and Matthew chapter 2. I hope you're having a great day. Love you so much. I'm going to speak pleasant words to you that are a honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Love you guys so very much.